Hello, welcome to the Healing Lab podcast. I'm your host, Carolyn Ozuna, and I could not be more excited for the guests that I'm bringing you today. They're total rock stars. I've known them for I think about 3 or 4 years now, and they're so inspirational. And what brought me to them was one thing, and that was their energy. These two have extraordinary energy. They have manifested an extraordinary life. They are speakers, actors, entertainers, and what they want is to co-create a world where healthy relationships are really the new normal. So put your hands together, listen, pay attention, and let me introduce Rachel and Emilio to you. Hello, guys.
Thanks for having us.
We're so happy to be here. And
I'm so happy to have you guys here too.
Yes.
And thank you for all your kind words. And man, we're just mirrors for you too, because that's exactly how we feel about you as well.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, what really inspired me was your story of how you manifested the role, because I think people don't understand, like, they are manifesting and creating their lives. Both of you are creating your lives. And so I love that story was the thing that actually brought me to you, which was how you manifested being on Step Up, right?
Yeah, center
And
stage, but yes.
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 On that movie where you,
Yes.
can you just explain how you did that? And then,
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, it's such a long story, but in a very short version of it is I saw a movie when I was young that changed my life during a really traumatic time for me. And this movie was called Center Stage. And I sat in the theater and I just had this visceral experience in my body. And I went from feeling at the time lost and confused and depressed and not really having a purpose or passion to all of a sudden feeling so lit up, like on fire, that like, that's what I want to do. I want to act, I want to dance, I want to inspire people the way that this movie inspired me. And I just sat there in a dark theater by myself after everyone had left. And I started visualizing myself doing it because I was in competitive gymnastics before and I learned the power of visualization. And anyways, everyone told me I was crazy because I was just a little scared, insecure little girl from Phoenix, Arizona. My whole family was in medicine. And they're like, yeah, right, have fun trying. Nobody ever makes it. Like, and man, I just right around the same time, I came across a book called As a Man Thinketh. And I was so young. And I don't know how I found this book, but I just became obsessed with everything it was talking about, how your thoughts affect the way that you feel, and then how you feel affects the way that you show up in the world, and how your energy really creates your reality. And I just became obsessed. And I started putting all these things I was learning at a young age to practice. Of every day I'd write down, I'm going to be in a movie like Center Stage one day. And when I moved to LA when I was 18 and I was terrified, I would watch that movie all the time to just reignite that inspiration, that feeling inside, because it was terrifying. I mean, I was homesick, I was lonely. I was really feeling discouraged when I was getting no after no after no from a ton of agents that I would audition from. And I was starting to believe that story. And when I would feel that just, those moments where you're just like so discouraged and I just wanted to like crawl under a rock and cry, I figured out that if I could just find a way to make myself feel differently, I learned that if I went into a dark room and just played like power playlists basically of songs that empowered me, and I just danced my face off and even like screamed and shouted and shaked and sang some of the words that were so empowering to me from the songs that inspired me, I just started to feel, I went from feeling that depleting emotions to empowered emotions. And randomly one day on the wall, after going through a series of some of the really hardest things that in this roller coaster ride of emotions of, man, can I do this? Can't I do this? I don't know. I feel so inspired, but everyone's telling me it's not possible and I'm not ready. And I'm feeling all these feelings of not feeling good enough. I saw a sign on the wall for auditions for Center Stage 2, the sequel to the film that changed my life as a little girl. And I almost didn't go because I kind of believed that story that like the agents all told me I wasn't good enough. And then I went home, wasn't going to go. And then I had this feeling when I was in the bathroom in the mirror in my room, and I swear this feeling like pulled me out of my house and to that audition that I wasn't going to go to. And thank God I listened to that feeling, because I ended up having to go in 6 different times for this role. And it was like, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. It was like months and months of feeling so close, but so far from my childhood dream. And I'll never forget the moment when an agent that had turned me down 3 months ago had called me saying, Rachel, Sony Pictures wants to book you as the lead role in Center Stage 2.
Wow. Wow.
And I was I literally almost got in a car accident because I was so wait, whoa.
Yes.
And then there's the whole, and so yeah, I always love to share that story because I just feel like I'm no different from anybody else, but I did do very certain things on my journey that helped me make really brave choices, even though I was terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned how to really powerful ways to shift my energy so that I didn't stay in a depleted emotion, which would have made me stay stuck. I learned how to use dance and movement and even singing and screaming and all forms of expression to shift my state and to start thinking differently so I could start acting differently. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those tools is also what helped me attract and manifest this guy.
Yeah, I was about to ask him. Yeah.
Partner. And you know, I'm so grateful every day that I got to, play that role, and countless roles since then that have really all been similar patterns of that story. Our relationship, my relationship with him, is by far the biggest blessing of my life. And I'm so grateful every single day. And a hard lesson I had to learn was that jobs come and go, money comes and goes, but it is how you feel about yourself and the people that you have in your life that makes the biggest difference.
Wow.
Amen. Amen. Yes, babe. Preach.
Takeaways from that story. I really loved it. The one thing was the visualization and how powerful visualization is, right?
Yes.
The mind can't tell the difference between something vividly imagined and something that's actually happening.
Yes.
So what you're doing is you're producing a feeling even before the event happens.
Mm-hmm.
And what you just said, Rachel, was actually really profound, because it's kind of what they teach in India. Without a vision for beautiful relationships, we perish. Right. And so our ability to have that vision for beautiful relationships and really put that priority on who do we have around us in our energy, in our field? Are they lifting us up? Are they, and I think so many people want a healthier relationships, but don't know how, and don't realize that we attract what we don't heal in our childhood, and then they're giving us an opportunity to heal together. And I love that so much. So, Emilio, how did you guys meet? How did you and Rachel meet? And why do you guys have this vision to have healthy relationships be the new normal in the world? Because that normally would come from some type of pain, right?
Totally. Yes. Great question.
Never comes from pain. Never.
So I could answer both of those questions, and I'll answer the second one first, just because, it is a pain to purpose story. For me, I grew up in a domestic violence type household. So my dad, very abusive to my mom, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, a lot of different ways. And so I was in fight or flight all the time growing up, hiding in the bathroom because of the chaos going on outside. I would be the last person to go to sleep. I would just wait and just listen by my door to make sure my dad didn't do anything. And if he did, I would go and find my mom or my sister somewhere in the house crying, and I would console them. And, it was just this terror that existed in the household for 18 plus years before I moved out of the house and went to college. But I remember first, second grade, being on the toilet, hiding in the bathroom and praying there. And there was a moment I remember where I just made a promise to myself that I would never recreate this. And I somehow knew, right, my higher self, the God within me, that just there was just this divine moment where I just knew. It was just a knowing, this is not the way that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I knew that because, when you're a kid, you just know what you know. You know, people who grow up poor don't know that they're poor until people tell them you're poor, and look at the difference, And so I didn't know, but I feel like my higher self absolutely knew, this is not the way it's supposed to be. This is not normal. And I made my promise to myself, one, at the time, don't become my father because of what was going on, but more so that I would create something that was opposite from what I was experiencing. And so hence started my hero's journey very early on. It really ignited a fire within me, if you can imagine, right? And a part of that was mixed with, of course, a lot of anger at the time, and a lot of things that I had to heal along the journey, and the forgiveness that I had to, give my dad, my mom, myself, etc. But because of that, and I think because it was prevalent not only with how I grew up, but also my grandfather's experience and his great grandfather's experience. So there was an absolute chain that I was aware of and wanted to break and be the person to break that domestic violence. And so, yeah, and of course, along that hero's journey, it's all the ups and downs, twists and turns. And so I very much became my father, not anywhere close to what he was, but just in the sense where I had anger issues and I had a lot of other things that I needed to let go of. And they, like you just said, right? If I didn't fully take care of them, my childhood traumas, then they were going to continue to show up in my relationships over and over. Right. And it certainly did. Mm-hmm. And yeah, after the 10,000 toxic relationships, I feel like I finally, even though I was a self-development junkie from a very young age, it was just like, gosh, how much more do I need to learn, or how much more do I need to release? But I remember in 2015 and 2016, I completely hit rock bottom. I lost everything in my life. I used to be in like finance, accounting, consulting, oil and gas. And I thought I was the shit back then, Carolyn. I thought I did, had a big ego. I was traveling the world, just thought, Mr. Look at who I am, look at who I did. Not knowing at the time that it was coming from a place of I didn't feel good enough. I didn't feel like I had enough. And therefore I was having this mask, this character of like, look at me. Yeah. But I was dying inside. And I wasn't listening to the whispers of God telling me some of the things I needed to stop and some of the things I needed to do. And because I didn't listen, God was like, well, here's a life event. You're going to lose everything. Wow. And so it really cracked me wide open and humbled me hard. And for 2 years, I was, couch to couch with friends and family. And I only say that just because it was the biggest blessing of my life, where I had to recreate myself. I had to sit with myself, be with myself, and finally look the man in the mirror more than ever. So much so that I can become a man to attract a woman like Rachel, and not self-sabotage it like I had in the past, but to nurture and grow that, and to really embody more so than ever what we preach, right, is to co-create this world where healthy, happy, harmonious relationships are the new norm. And, it's definitely a long story, but, one of the biggest themes throughout that, and it's a big one, which was like one of the last relationships I had before attracting Rachel, was just finally loving myself, because I didn't realize that I didn't. I was always sort of, because of my core wound of wanting to help my mom and my sister young because they were hurting, I would always quote unquote attract these wounded birds, right? These people that needed to help. And I wanted to save them. And I wanted to save these women. Mm-hmm. And it's cheesy, but it's true. It's cheesy and cliche to say this, but like the one that really needed saving was me. Like I needed to finally like choose me. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, and when I really filled up my cup, it just started to overflow finally. And I started to, I was a full cup attracting full cups. Mm-hmm. And instead of, an empty cup attracting empty cups, like I did the majority of my life. And so I think I'm super grateful. I wouldn't rewrite it. I'm the man who I am because of everything that happened. And I'm super grateful for that. My mom and dad played their part. Mm-hmm. And it allowed me to be the man that I am for Rachel. And so that's sort of the pain and purpose story for me in a nutshell. And
I also think it's really beautiful because now him and his parents, they have their whole family has such a beautiful relationship. Like him and his sister, his mom, his dad, there's like a love and understanding and compassion that you can just feel when you're around them. And I think when we were first starting, when we were dating and I first met them, I was like, wait, you're like, I don't know. There's just so much love. There was so much love. And I think people can feel the difference when there's like a surface level love versus a higher kind of love that feels like it goes beyond any sort of superficial layer. And I think that higher love really does oftentimes come from going through hardships together and being able to have to practice those muscles of, there's a phrase I love says, can you love beyond belief? Right. So a lot of times I think we're kind of taught a more conditional kind of love. Like, I'll love you if you do X. And a lot of people are even taught that kind of conditional love from even like God or their creator. It's like, I grew up in a very strict religion, and my first understanding of divine love was conditional. It was very much that way. And I think because I had that story of like, oh, I have to be a certain way to get love, versus really unwiring and unprogramming all that stuff and being like, no, I am love, and therefore I am deserving of love no matter what. And real love, that higher love, that divine love, loves beyond beliefs. Loves beyond differences of opinion. It loves beyond our mistakes. It loves beyond everything. And I think that is what heals, is when we can have that kind of love, both for ourselves and for others. And it is not always easy, but it is profound and powerful.
Oh, I love that so much. I love what both of you just shared so much. And one thing that I love is I think everyone listening to this can probably relate to a challenging childhood moment, and especially if there was, because even some people are like, well, my dad never hit or never, or my mom never hit, but you find out they were giving the silent treatment or neglected. Well, people don't understand this. The same thing happens, the same chemical release happens when you're neglected, like when you're ignored, as when you get punched in the face. Isn't that crazy?
That's so
so it's like that, whether it's passive aggressive or aggressive, it's still harming you. But the great thing is we can heal, we can start to heal. And you guys are a total example of what that looks like. You guys have such a passionate, beautiful relationship, and I can just feel your hearts and how much you love helping and impacting people with your energies and your souls and your hearts, and that unconditional love that we're talking about. I think it's so important to talk about, like you were saying, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be moments of love. I think, as controversial, as this might sound, because when it comes to Emilio, when you were saying, because I'm like, do I stir this pot right now, or do I wait till a 5th or 6th episode comes out? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna stir it. I'm gonna stir it up. And so, I used to think that it's, when there was domestic abuse, it's like, it's just the person who's abusing the other person. It's always their fault and not the other person. But I don't believe that anymore. And I think that, and I wanted to get your take on it. And I think that it takes two people to tango. And what I mean by that is I've seen relationships, and I've worked with a lot of couples where they'll say, the man will, be upset, yelling, and then the woman just completely shuts down. And then he like the withdrawal of love. It's like being abandoned as a child. Don't understand. And Mel Robbins talks about this too, is that we're like 5-6-year-olds in these 35 38-year-old bodies, like just trying to figure out and navigate how can we have emotional maturity here, how can we grow up together. What do you guys think on that? Do you think, because I know that a lot of sometimes women in particular can be a little bit wounded around this topic, because they're like, it's not me, it was them, he was a narcissist, I did nothing, and that's their stance. Like, more power to them. If that perspective and victimization is working for them, go for it. But I think the biggest victims in the world can be the biggest gift bringers once that energy is transformed. And so what is both of your take on that?
Oh, such a great question.
And couldn't agree more. I mean, I'll let you speak for, but I mean, like, I absolutely agree that it takes two to tango. We always, in Relationship Renegades, we always talk about it's the man in the mirror and it's the woman in the mirror. It's always both. It's always both. And together we rise, and together we can, fail and just go into a deep dark circle. Like, so like with my dad, there were certain things that my mom did, whether it was withdrawing love, or whether there was something she said or didn't say, or how she showed up, whatever. And that allowed my dad to, it was just more adding wood to the fire, like whether it was one or the other. Like, I remember even when, like, many, many years ago, when I used to talk about this story, and when I used to talk about specifically like the toxic relationships I had before Rachel, I would always talk about, like, I mean, they were certainly toxic in a sense where, yes, they did a lot of things where, like, they knew my buttons and they would push them and they would, like, twist them, and they knew how to hurt me and spew poison at me with certain things. But, like, I also reacted to that and spewed poison back and added more wood to the fire too. And I never used to share that piece. And I would say some really awful things, and it was both. And it's like, now if I was in that position, I would just know that, wow, this person's really hurting. She's spilling poison at me. Like, hurt people. And I would just send love. And if it kept happening, I'd be like, well, this is not for me. I love myself enough to remove myself.
That's right.
But I bless you and I love you. And, like, man, if there's anything I can do, like, it's just a different, higher perspective. And so, yes, I did things as well in those relationships because I wasn't healed yet too. And I attracted those things, and we were both, learning and healing and doing our best. And I think, my mom and dad were doing their best, but, they didn't have like also the resources and the books that we read and the conference that we went to, the soul liberations that we went to, and, all of these things.
And
right?
Community and connection and
they didn't have that. Like, at least my parents didn't.
My parents didn't either.
And so, my dad was a product of his environment, not giving him any excuses, but like he was raped by his uncle and no one believed him, and he never had any friends, never played any sports. The therapist would pump him full of drugs and everyone thought he was a liar. And then, he shrank and shrank and shrank into a deep dark hole with depression and all these things, and then never got any help ever. And so, you're going to have this product from your environment of, all these things. So it was just having so much compassion and empathy and forgiveness for him, and ultimately just loving him fully no matter what. And that's what ended up, helping him heal. But back to your question, and then I'll pass it over. Yeah, I absolutely think that it takes two to tango, that it is always both. So I would say yes.
Yeah, well, and I think it's really reminded me when you were talking about, I remember when we came to your celebration, which was one of the most profound experiences of our lives.
Beautiful.
It was incredible. One of the most healing processes in that experience, and there were many, but one of the ones that's really sticking out to me as we talked about this was getting into this deep meditative space that you helped us everyone get into. And then we basically got to go through life almost seeing what it would be like to be with your mom or your dad, like almost as if you were like an angel on their shoulder, witnessing them go through everything that they went through, given the information that you had, right? And so I know a lot of my core wounds were different things I went through with my mom growing up, and being able to go through that experience where I got to just like see what it might have been like as her going through the different experiences, like being with her in the room when she told me that, her dad told her that she was getting fat, and that if she wasn't thin enough that her boys wouldn't like her, or her husband would divorce her, or, just different things that she shared with me, and like not having any resources and not knowing who to go to, or not having, like, I've had so many coaches and mentors and guides and books and resources and access with the internet and social media that like wasn't available back then. It wasn't talked about. And so it allowed me to have such a different relationship with my mom and my dad, which, I think most all relationship issues that we have stem from something with our mom or our dad. It's just because
for sure.
like they're our first role models, and it's nothing to do with them. Like he had said, I think we're all just here on our own journeys to learn our own lessons, and all of the contrast I love looking at as I grew up in a way where everything was like good, bad, right, or wrong. And I would always try and like put something in that box of like, this thing that happened to me was bad. This thing that happened to me was good. And what I've learned that has been so powerful for me is what if none of that is even there? What if it just is? And what if it's all just gifts? And what if, because some of the things that felt like the hardest, worst things that happened to me really were the best things that ever happened to me. I mean, some of, the several really hard, like soul crushing breakups that I went through in different toxic relationships I was in before I met him, in the time, I mean, it feels like hell. Like it feels awful. And I remember so many nights crying and praying and just being like, God, why? Like, why is it so hard? Like, I just want to find my guy. Like, I know he's out there. Like, where is he? And why is it so hard? And and those moments when you see other people that have, a relationship that is like, oh, I just want that so bad. And why isn't it happening for me? Just like, I felt all those feelings. And when I would end up in these situations that were just like complete blowouts, like some things that I was just like, how did I get here? Like, how did I get in this? This is not my life. Like those kinds of moments. And even though they were so hard to go through, I am so grateful for them, because it is the reason why I'm able to have such a deep appreciation for him and our relationship right now, which I think is the greatest superpower that I have. And I know that I would not have that superpower if I didn't go through the contrast. And so anybody listening to this right now that's maybe in one of those really hard chapters, I know it sucks. I know it's so hard. But if you can pull back and be like, what if this thing is just here to teach me lessons and to really give me superpowers in the future if I'm open to them? It really can be, it can just be such a different experience, even going through those times, that I wish I had learned that lesson earlier.
I think I love what you guys are saying. And I think, what I have found in my own healing journey is everything's a mirror of me, right? And so sometimes if I can't see it in myself, it'll show up in somebody else first, so I can see it, then heal it. It'll reflect back to me, and then I'm like, okay, what is it about this trait that I'm judging? If we realize that we all have selfishness, we all have aggressiveness, like we all have them, we just have them to a different scale and level, and then there's so much more compassion. But what I found is, like, especially with my relationship with Jason, is he wanted to learn my past, not so he could hurt me or use it against me, but to heal me, to know how to love me. And so when we get into these and Jason's and I relationship has been the most challenging relationship I've ever been in. He is like, and it's beautiful, but the most loving and the most challenging. Like, we were total mirrors of each other. So instead of, I was saying, I remember at first I was like, I got to change him. He needs to change. I think that's a narrative, right? In a lot of relationships and a lot of couples, it's like, hey, my guy or my girl is doing this, this, and this, and they need to change. But I was like, okay, I've tried pointing the finger and telling him to change, but what if I stopped doing that? And I started to see what's toxic or dramatic in me that's attracting this situation that keeps having him show up the way he's showing up. I'm doing something that's causing him to be this way. And so once I changed my energy, he changed. And so, Emilio, that's what I hear you guys saying, is because you could have stayed in the other relationships had they been, a vibrational frequency, and then you grow together instead of passing ships. But now you guys have met, and now you have, okay, we're gonna grow and heal. You're gonna deep dive into the stuff. Okay, I'll stay up here and hold your air tank, and like, and then we get to deep dive and you get to grow together. And so I think for those listening to this that want to heal their relationships, even if it's with a parent or son or a brother or any of that, I think what you're saying is really powerful. One, what I'm taking away from what you guys are saying is the visualization, vision for relationship, having that vision, like you were saying, you were praying to God, this is the man that I want. And then, Amelia's like, how you doing?
But each of us had to do our own work, and we'll constantly do our own work. I mean, we do our work, daily, whether it's individually or collectively. And you're absolutely right. I think, like, I hope people more and more and more wake up to the fact that, like, our external reality is a direct reflection of our internal reality. And the beautiful piece of it is that, like, oh, well, then that's like, dang it. But then, like, also awesome, because then, people are building their external real estate everywhere. It's like, build your internal real estate. And when that happens, everything changes. Like when I was talking about, I was an empty cup, I started to fill that up. I was a whole cup, started attracting whole cups. And it's, and even with Rachel and I, when we first met, like, we often talk about how it's very much like, you mentioned frequency, like tuning forks, right? Like, if I have tuning forks A, B, C in this room, and there's tuning forks A, B, C in the other room, if I hit one of those tuning forks, like tuning fork A, what's going to happen in the other room? Automatically, tuning fork A up there starts to vibrate. That's right. No one is in that room, but it just starts to vibrate. And so, when I was in these toxic relationships, I think when you're born to present day, you're acquiring all of these tuning forks, if we want to make an analogy here. And it's like, when I was, it takes two to tango. When I was fighting with my toxic relationships in the past, she would have said something. Like, I remember getting a promotion. Excuse me. And she said something like really awful back. And I was so surprised. Like, I just got a promotion. I'm like, I wanted to share this with you because this is for us, and we get to grow together. We get to do things together. And she said something so awful to me. And I was so surprised that I like yelled back at her and was like, what the heck? How could you dare say that? Like, and then fight. But if you think about the tuning fork, right? So let's call tuning fork A, I'm not good enough. I very much in that chapter of my life felt I was not good enough. And she also felt like she was not good enough. And how did it show up? I said, I got a promotion. I'm so excited. she didn't feel good enough. She said something. So when I said my thing, her tuning fork started to vibrate. And then she said something that then turned on my tuning fork. So tuning fork A, I'm not good enough, vibrated with her, which vibrated mine. And then all of a sudden tuning forks are starting to vibrate. And then there's a fight, and there's a fight, and there's a fight. And it's not until you do the work that you can literally remove those tuning forks, where if that happened again, I'd be like, there's no trigger right now. Like, I don't have that tuning fork anymore. Nothing's resonating with me because I've healed from that. And I think I hope people listening be like, you can't heal from things where they're not triggering anymore. And so, yeah, I think there is something to be said about frequency and energy and what you attract. I mean, even when Rachel and I attracted each other, we had our own things that we had to deal with from the very on, where I had trust issues and she had
honesty issues.
Yeah,
we talk about perfect. And I think like you said, I really do. Relationships are like the most incredible like opportunity for growth. And there's a way, in a healthy way.
Sorry, somebody called me. I don't know.
So when you're in, I just think that the opportunity is always there, but usually it'll be a perfect setup for either a complete blowout or a deeper love and connection and bliss, like maybe you've never experienced before. And I just remember, learning that lesson before I met him and realizing it, like it showed up, and it showed up hard. Like, just like you said, like Jason has been one of those beautiful relationships, but also one of the most challenging. We've also had that in ours, where every single time it feels like there was this perfect setup. Again, he had trust issues, because maybe like women were dishonest with him in the past, or cheated on him in the past
and all that.
And I had honesty issues. Like, my biggest thing was, I grew up really, and I had to get to the root of this. The root was that I had a really hard time being fully honest in relationships, because I was always wanting to be what I thought they wanted me to be so that they would love me. And that I had to do some deep inner work to figure out where that came from. And that came from, I grew up in a household where I learned that it wasn't safe to tell my dad the truth. And so the male figure in my life, I learned, well, if I can just like tell a white lie, then I'll be safe, or I won't get yelled at, or I'll get love. And so I just kept doing that, even though I was like, wait, I am an honest person. Like, I felt like, I'm not a liar. But when I really had to do like the hard work where you have to really face yourself, because I kept ending up in these like webs of lies in these relationships that I was in. And then, back then I would blame the guy. I'm like, they have all these jealousy issues. Like I can't believe them. They're so whatever. And then when I really looked at it, I was like, well, yeah, of course they have jealousy issues. You're not being honest. Like, there's a reason. Like, you're over there talking to other guys and your energy's not fully there. And like, and you're telling little white lies. So anyway, but it was this perfect opportunity of like, okay, he has this past and I have this past. And we've said that, like, okay, we want to call in our partner. Like, we want to find our one and create a healthy relationship. And so I think life is always giving us opportunities to prove if we've actually learned the lesson, if we actually really want what we say we want. Totally. And if we want what we really want, did we do the work to be able to show up in that different way, to be able to actually create that? And because it's all creation. Like you said, we're all creators of our own experience, and every day we're creating our conversation, we're creating our relationships, we're creating our meal, you're creating your day, your life. And so it's just, I think it's those opportunities when like everything inside of you, is scared to be honest. That was my thing. I was so scared to tell him some of my deepest, darkest secrets, but I knew that if I didn't, like, I knew the pain that was associated with not being fully honest. And I was like, I'm not doing that again. Like, I know where that goes. I don't care how terrified I am to tell him this thing that I'm terrified to tell him. I have to do it. Like, I have to do it. Again, that has become a superpower because I have so much pain associated with the opposite. And it is when I did that, when I told him one of my deepest, darkest secrets, that I literally thought if I told him this thing that he would not love me anymore. I thought he would leave me. And I was like shaking, almost wanted to throw up telling him this thing I was so scared to tell him. And when I told him, and I think this is an example of the difference of like a really safe, supportive, healthy relationship, is he just looked at me as I'm crying and shaking and like telling him this thing. And he just held me and let me cry in his arms. And he said, I love you even more now.
Wow. Wow.
And it was like it felt like a lightning bolt moment, like generational healing within my heart and my soul. And in that moment, that's what I knew. I was like, this is my, like, I mean, I already knew that this is my guy, but like, it was like, this is my person. And this is what I want. And this is what I want for the world, to be able to feel that. And that, going back to what I said, can you love beyond belief? Because that is what really heals. That's what really creates that, you know, the show called The Healing Lab. Like that's what it is. Like that's what heals.
And I think you can create that healing lab with each other, right? Like it's possible. Like as hard as it is to hear certain things, if you can, you know, all the work that we do essentially creates a longer decision point, right? Like the decision point, instead of reacting to it, the more work, you kind of have a longer reaction point, decision point. So like breathe and like, I usually go right. And I know what that is. I'm gonna try left now. And when you go the opposite way of what you're normally doing, like I did in that situation, right? It was really hard, but it's like, there's so much alchemy in that. There's so much magic in that, where you're literally in this like other universe, you and the other person. And it's like, what are you gonna do? And if you can choose differently, right? Then like you both, as you guys talk about in soul liberation, you both elevate right there and then, right? Together. And together you get to rise. And then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, what universe and playing field are we at now? And it sounds cheesy, but it's like, it really is true. Then
you're at a different energetic state.
So many different energetic states. And you're like, wow, you look different. Like, wow, this is insane. I can really feel like there's a heaven on earth here now. And so I feel like it's possible to have a heaven on earth here for yourself and your partner, but it does take those brave choices. And it's that quote, right? Hard decisions are easy decisions, hard life, hard decisions, easy life. And so it's like, be brave, you could do it. And it's right around the corner.
It is worth it. And I think everybody listening to this, I love what you guys are saying, because Rachel, when you were talking about your authenticity, honesty is authenticity, right? And they did this study, it's called the Spain study, SPANE, and they thought that the highest vibration was going to be love, like in the world. Love is a very high vibration, but it wasn't love. You know, it was actually authenticity. And authenticity was like 4,000 times more powerful than love. And all authenticity is when we believe what we say. That's it. That's all. It's like when we're being honest in who we are and what we believe, we're sending out this really huge wave of vibration. And so authenticity creates that heaven on earth, like you were saying. You know, that like, oh, I can be myself in this relationship. I don't have to twist. I can have friends. I can have this, like, I can breathe here. I can be my own person and be with you, you know. And I think I think that most people don't take the time to see that their partner is triggering in them what needs to heal. Because Emilio, you were talking about triggers, like, oh, I have the opportunity. I can go left or I can go right. I can get triggered and keep going down this path and create even more pain, or I can stop and say, what is this really about? Where is this really coming from? Okay, he's just triggered, you know, something from my childhood when my dad did this to me, or whatever the case may be. And when you start asking, what can my triggers teach me, you get a different answer than let me just react to these triggers instead of respond. So I think what you guys are saying is really big. And I think that people listening, like, because relationships, you know, they did another study, 75 years of happiness. I think you guys have heard this. And what they found was the happiness predictor, like I think Rachel, you were saying, it's not money, it's not so one of you guys said, it's not the job, it's not the car you drive, the house you live in, or anything like that. The biggest predictor in someone being happy or not is their community and their relationships.
It's also one of the biggest it's also one of the biggest things for longevity. You know, when they did the 80-year Harvard study, when they thought genetics were going to be the biggest thing that led to a long, like, happy life, it was relationships. So people that were like, hey, you want to look younger and beautiful longer and have a great quality of life, focus on relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
Surprise.
Surprise. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and talking to about this. Is there like one or two things that you would like, the Healing Lab, I always would like to leave people. I know I took some notes, visualizations, triggers into treasures, and teachers. Is there anything else that you wanted to share, like anything that you would feel would help people on the Healing Lab that they can do and apply to their life like right away?
I definitely have one.
Yeah, something came up when you said that, but go ahead, go first.
Well, so we're actually working on a book right now called A Higher Love, The New Rules of Engagement, because what we've found is, people are like, I want that higher love. Like, I want what you guys are talking about, but I don't know, like, how do you play at that level? Like, what are the steps? What are the tools that how you operate there?
Yes.
And so there's many steps to each of these steps, but the main steps is how to fill your cup. So learning what it actually means to love yourself, like practically, what does that look like for you? Because it's a unique thing that everyone has to go on to figure out what that looks like and feels like on a daily basis.
Yeah. 2
is how to create a space where you and the other person you're with feel safe, seen, heard, and loved.
Yeah.
And that's huge. And, you could go through so many things there.
Yeah.
The third one I'm going to talk about today, or right now in this moment, because I think it's huge. The third one is called Own Your Shit. So becoming a master of owning your stuff.
I love owning my shit.
We have this game that we love to teach people that has been really powerful for us. And it's really just to trick your ego. Because when you're in that space where you feel triggered and you're feeling that argument come up, your ego just wants to be right. It wants to win so bad. It wants to win. And your body is like pumping full of adrenaline. And it's so hard to like choose that higher path of choosing love or even that authenticity. So this game is the first person to own their shit wins. So most of the time, your ego wants to win the fight. But if you can trick your ego and say, no, how we win here, how I win is by owning my stuff. And so if I'm being at all passive aggressive, or if I'm coming from a place of hurt, or like if I am in this space and it's like heated, it's the first person to say, like, own their stuff in some way. And every time we do that, one of us does that, it diffuses everything.
Yeah.
Like, so it's not just that you're winning by owning your shit, like you win together, because it is what diffuses things. And I will say some practical tools on how to do that, because it can look different for everyone. But for me, sometimes I'm a very, and maybe it's because I grew up a dancer or an athlete, but I also just believe we're not just human thinkings, we're human beings, and we need visceral experiences. Like we shift and change through somatic expression, not just, I personally cannot think my way out of feeling like all of that adrenaline and those crazy emotions that I feel. Like a lot of times for me, I've had to learn that sometimes if we're in a really heated thing, I'm like, you know what, like I feel really heated right now. Like I need to go take some me time. And what I'll go do in that me time is play a song. I'll go in a safe space and just like dance and shake and scream and cry or hit a bag or do something to like literally shake out all of that adrenaline and probably cortisol that's running through my body. And then from that space, after I feel like fully just like released, I can think a lot clearer, and I can come back to this space of, okay, what is it? What am I doing in this? Even though every single part of me wants to blame him because I'm so mad at him. Like how can I own my stuff in this situation? And then usually when I like sit in that space of just complete like expressed outness, that's when I get some really powerful downloads and ahas, and I'm able to come back to him and say, hey, I'm really sorry I was doing this thing. And I know I was blaming you, but like, it's really came from this place. And then it's like everything just, even when I felt like there was no way we were going to get through this thing, we come closer together than ever. And it was the best gift. So I said a lot.
No, that's great. I loved it. My favorite part that you said was the beginning where, because Jason and I have that game. We say the first to apologize wins. And the first to apologize wins. So the first, and if neither of us can shift, we'll take time. But most of the time, if I say to him, like we have a rule, if I say I can't shift, I need you to shift right now. Like and I admit I'm in my stuff right now and I can't shift. Can you please just or if he'll say it to me, like, look, you gotta tone your energy down because I'm getting, you know,
Yeah.
So I love that tool, owning your shit. That's like such a great tool. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I too, you know, when I'm at definitely if I'm heated about something, going for a run or the gym or just moving your body in some type of way. And they say even when you're in an argument with your spouse, going for a walk together when you're fighting is so good, especially if it's heated, because if you are looking at each other, I know that sounds weird, but if you're looking directly at each other and you're in a really heated state, it can feel threatening. But when you're walking, you're moving towards something, you're moving forward, and you're not looking at each other, so you can hear each other better.
Totally.
So I love those. I love those tools that you just said. Okay, Emilio, go for it.
Yeah. Well, instead of trying to like go and they're like, oh, what do I, because I love to share certain things, you know, but I always want to go with what just comes up in the moment. And when you said triggers are treasures, you know, we often say the same thing, like triggers are gifts, right? It's another opportunity to find out what hasn't been healed yet. So, you know, we do really feel that it is a gift where it's like, if I do get triggered, I'm like, oh, shoot, is there something else? And it could maybe be the same thing and maybe just some residue that, or just the last bit, or maybe there's just more there that I didn't know. So it is really the reframing of like, what is there? And taking some time to reflect or journal or read a book or see what's calling you out of all the things that are out there to help heal and transform your life, right? But with that, in addition to doing the work, on the flip side of the coin, a very simple, practical thing that I love doing is when someone triggers me, and the people that used to trigger me, like I've told them before, so there's nothing like hidden, right? Like my father-in-law used to trigger me. At times, my brother-in-law used to trigger me of like certain things he would say or do around my sister, and I'm like, oh, or certain strangers, right? And so, but I've learned to play this game of it's kind of twofold. One is saying this phrase, just like me, because I have probably done that in the past. I probably am maybe still doing it subconsciously or non-consciously, or I'm hiding that from myself or distracting or denying that about myself, right? Because like you said, right, like I feel like we're always only ever dealing with ourselves. And so when I do that, I'll either say just like me and rep that, so that muscle gets bigger. But then also I like to find the gold. When you said treasure, right? What came up for me is like, I tend to look for the gold, right? So as soon as something triggers, yes, I know I have to do some work, but in that moment, can I find the gold in this person? What is something that I really see in this person that I'm not seeing? So it allows me to shift into a different lens to be like, well, this, like, you know, I'll give you an example, like a small little example, like one of my best friends, you know, there's a phase in my life where I haven't been posting the past few years and speaking as much as I want to speak and doing the things that I want to be doing like I used to. And then I would see him posting and doing these things. And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, I feel like that's fake. He's just doing this, it's posting all this stuff. And then I'm like, what's the gold there? And I'm like, well, it's really like, for me, that's what I want to be doing. Like, he's a beautiful reminder of like, hey man, this is possible. Like you can do all these things. And he was at a place when I first met him where he's not doing that. And he was very at this place where he was suffering. And it's like, man, he's like really doing it. Like, he's like really traveling around the world, meeting these incredible people, doing these things. And like, and he's got a family. Like, God bless you, brother. Like, that's amazing. And just seeing like, how can I see something that I'm not seeing in that moment? So what's the gold? How can I find some gold there with that person? There were some other things that I forgot.
Even when you're triggered, I think.
You're triggered, yeah. But I think like you can build that muscle, right? That decision point where as soon as I get triggered, I'm like, okay, got some work to do. But in this moment, what's the gold? And so I think that really helps me kind of shift into a better state so I can enjoy the day and I can enjoy my wife and I can enjoy the things around me and not create suffering for myself. Because at the end of the day, we only do it to ourselves. So that's mine.
Oh, I love that. You know what? It reminded me of like judgments into joy or jealousy into joy, because it's really like jealousy is kind of like a turning point. I know when I first saw one of my mentors on stage, I was like, look at this guy. He's just amazing. He's like out there just being himself. And I was like, I want to do that. Why can't I do that? And I was so jealous. And I remember I wanted to be him. And then as I grew, I was just like, I don't want to be him. I want to be me. And I just
There
really
you go.
expression of me. And so that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for everything that you guys are teaching. These are practical healing tools that people listening can apply right now. I hope that everyone listening goes to follow you on Instagram. I know you guys are on Instagram, and I can't wait for your book that is coming out. We'll have to have you back on, and I would love to talk about it and then post the link for people to order it. I'm so these tools, like around the games, they're life changing, because I think people sometimes look at healing as this daunting task, but it can be playful, it can be fun, it can be light. It doesn't. Oh, there are going to be heavy moments, yes, but it doesn't have to be this hard thing. You can start. We can just start here. So,
no, I love that you said that, because that's a huge thing for us. That play is so powerful. Like, and that I think it's really underrated. That's why, if people do, I hope they do come and follow us, and you'll see like a lot of the stuff we share is about play and being silly and ridiculous together. And, but also I think that access to play, I think a lot of us have lost the access to play and to joy and to fun, because we've become like, adulting, we have to be super serious, and like, and one of our big messages is that play is so powerful. And if you're having a hard time accessing that amount of play or fun in your relationship, then there's something to look at.
I love that you just said that. Brene Brown, I think it's Brene Brown, says this. Forgive me if it's not, but someone had said, I read, the most terrifying emotion that we can feel is actually joy. Because when you allow yourself to experience joy truly, then it's like, oh God, when's the other shoe going to drop? Or am I allowed to feel this joy? Like, how many times when we were kids did, stop crying if you're crying. And then, hey, don't stop getting so excited. Don't do that. Don't, right. And so I think you're so right, Rachel, where you're like, joy and play is so healing. So we need to integrate that. I love you both so much. Thank you so much for being on the Healing Lab.
Thank you.
I'll make sure to send this out to everybody. Go follow them. They're amazing souls and amazing people. And this has been an amazing episode of the Healing Lab with Carolyn Ozuna. And I'm so excited to continue to guide you to amazing people who are really changing the world. So thank you, Rachel and Emilio, for coming on. And we'll talk to you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. We love you, Carolyn.
Thank you, guys. Love you too.